We have all the board members almost here. We're missing only only missing one, Rick. Let's call the meeting to order, and it's July 18, 2019, and it is 7:34 p.m. Let's have the roll call loudly so the one in the hallway can respond.
Here he comes.
I'm here. I had to deal with technology again.
Roll call, please.
Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Marshall?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Long?
Here barely.
There is no president's statement. I have 2 blue slips, but they are for items on the agenda, so I see no oral comments other than on the agenda.
I got a comment.
Okay, Lou Wall, and if you would please fill out a blue slip at your leisure so we know how to spell your name.
W-A-L-L. Anyway, when I was running for this board back in the fall of 1987, I would go to the SAM meetings, SAM board meetings, and to this board meeting, and I had my own little recorder, and I'd record the meeting. And then I would go home and I would listen to the meeting a second time, and through that I got the feel for what the heck was going on, and positions, and the matter of being on the board. When I got on the board, I got elected, I continued to do this. And David's not here, and you weren't there, but David's probably the only one that would remember this. We would go into our meeting, well, our president at the board then would rewrite the minutes that his staff would prepare to fit what he wanted to be said in the minutes. And they did not reflect what had gone on in the meetings, and I had a tape recording of what was there. And so Joan Briotti, who was elected with me, the two of us would take the next 30 to 45 minutes every meeting rewriting the minutes. And somewhere along the line, I remember whether David is the one that suggested, or whether Joan suggested, that our minutes should be action minutes. There's no need to have a transcript of the meeting. And I don't think we have any more prima donnas on this board that want to have, here's your son, that want to have their words cast in permanently in writing. And so I think you ought to consider, save time and effort of your staff and paper to go back to action minutes and not every word that is said by each person with regard to this. And if somebody needs to do a word-by-word thing, they have access to the TV broadcasts of the meetings. I think that was my suggestion.
So Lou, what are action minutes again?
What is the actions the boards took?
Could be the
votes,
Yeah.
votes, who
Oh.
seconded, who.
Oh, okay.
Right.
What did you actually do? Not
Okay.
every single person's
Okay.
words.
Yep.
And that's a good normal thing.
Well, I think maybe we should put that as a future agenda item if we want to. I'd love to discuss it more.
Sure. I'm
Yeah.
just going to remind the board that we had these discussions
Yes, we have.
several times before, so we can have it again. Thanks.
And we'll spend more time in paper and minutes talking about it.
That's right. Okay, consent agenda, we have none. This is the second meeting of the month. Old business, an update, MWSD collections contract update. And this is for our collections, not our trash and recycling, but for our sewer system.
Thanks, Catherine. So we were asked to put this up as a standing item. We bring this up once per month. We were asked to review and update our contract for collection services, sewer collection services. And we're receiving these services from the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side. We have always, at the last meeting, we already said there is actually some agreements under review by district legal counsel, and that is still the case. We've actually now looked a little closer at the scope of services that we think makes sense for this district. And that means actually introducing some efficiencies, meaning cleaning newer pipes at a less frequent than before. Looking very closely at hotspots, for example, there is a number of hotspots that are being cleaned that don't need that, for example. There is, however, some increases to testing and inspections of mains that we're thinking about, increases to pump station washdowns, and a lot more attention really to the pump stations themselves in various forms. So that's really what we're right now. We still are communicating with the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side on a more or less regular basis, touching base about once per week, and getting closer to trying to exchange some language. So that's where we're currently on. And the next update will be on August 15. I'm expecting that there's not going to be many changes, but we'll bring this up on August 15 once more.
Okay.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Are you dealing with Kishan all the time, pretty much now as the
Yes.
acting general manager?
Yes.
He's the liaison person.
He's the liaison. It has, of course, an advantage that he is as the engineer of
Yeah.
the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast, are very versed in
Very good.
what's happening on the collection side.
Good, thanks.
And I was in talking to Keishan yesterday, and he talked about a meeting he had with a company called ElectroScan, which is the one that can detect issues in non-iron pipe. It sounded like a pretty interesting deal, and he said if the three agencies and SAM were all to contract with ElectroScan, because the equipment is hugely expensive, but as a service for our running scans on our non-iron pipe, that it would be a better deal for everyone.
He actually followed up with us directly on this, and so we've been starting to think about this and talking to him about this as well.
Yeah, it sounded like it's not a brand new experimental technology, and I was very glad that he had brought it forward.
Yes, yeah, that sounds interesting. Absolutely, we're looking into it and are very interested.
Do you have just a rough breakdown on iron versus non-iron?
Well,
Just roughly.
Are you talking about the amounts in the
Pipe,
district?
yeah. Yeah.
the majority of pressurized lines, of older pressurized lines, are metal
They're
pipe.
metal, yeah.
All the gravity pipes that we have in the district are various materials, and there is also a mix of steel in them, but the majority is other stuff. Steel may have some orange color. Clay is probably a very common one, is a common one, but of course, various plastic types have input.
So this could help.
Since laterals are not iron as a rule,
Yes.
especially the older ones, which may be cardboard or were cardboard,
Clay.
Right.
and broken clay and so on. I'm wondering, when you're talking to them, if we couldn't find out about a way to do checks on our laterals, since that's a lot of our I&I.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we could even think about a program where we offer homeowners to participate, for example. right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say, right?
Yes, that is what
Very
you're
cheap
hearing me
inspection,
say. Well, it's an interesting technology, and if it gets further along, we can have somebody come in, and they actually ran a test for Keyshawn along the pipe underneath the road, between the highway, of the plastic pipe between the highway and the plant. And he was, number one, very pleased with the way the inspection came out, and was told that if there were holes or cracks or breaks, they would have shown exactly where they are. So, okay, moving on to new business. Review and possible action concerning appropriations limit.
All right, so this is a standard item that we have to meet each year. California State Constitution refers to it as GAN Initiative, or GAN Appropriations Limit, and that was adopted in 1980 and places limits on the amount of proceeds of taxes that state and local agencies can appropriate and spend each year. And so there's some factors like inflation and population, as well as our our budget, numbers from our budget that go into this calculation. We usually receive around $250,000 on the water side, $250,000 on the sewer side in taxes. The appropriation limit for the prior fiscal year was $2,294,000. So I think the interesting factors that go in here is that the San Mateo County unincorporated area change in population was 0.4%, and the change in per capita personal income, and that's in California, went up by 3.85%. I think these are interesting numbers. So we calculated the appropriation limit for this fiscal year, 1920, at $2,392,041. So we're way below what we're actually receiving and spending in taxes. So we are required to adopt a resolution that essentially manifests what I was just describing, and that's the resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District determining the 2019-2020 appropriation limit.
Okay. I see a comment from Greg. I have your blue slip, thank you.
Greg Yeagas, Montara. So when I read this, I thought I was looking at found money. I don't really understand what this limit is. Does this saying that we could be receiving almost $4 million in taxes and we're not? Or we could be receiving $2.5 million and we're only getting $250 plus $250? What can we do? Because we have a deficit that you guys have quantified to some degree that's millions, and I'm just wondering, what's this money?
We cannot appropriate taxes. And why don't we let Alex, who's our economist,
Hey, yes, we're the financial expert. Do you know something about the appropriations limit, Alex?
and please come up to the microphone.
I don't know if I need to go up there because this isn't like our area of specialty, so I'm not that familiar with how the all works.
Well,
I've
let's-
made these
let me
calculations
simply
before.
answer the question
Or
with
yeah,
the
and then
statement
Chris.
of, if the state would send us more than $2,392,041 in taxes, that would then we would have a problem and would have to probably return some funds or alert the state that we're exceeding our appropriations.
How much are they sending us? You said about $500,000?
Yes.
Why can't we get the whole 2 million?
Because
There's no 2 million.
There is no 2 million. This is just a theoretical limit that we can't exceed.
yes,
So
We're
no,
too small
it's,
to.
it's
And-
not.
No, that comes from the property taxes. That's the portion that would be allocated to us. If that happened to add up to more than the limit, this is the game limit, then we would have to work something out. But we can't make money appear out of nowhere. The money comes from the property taxes.
I was just hoping we could get to the 2 million something.
No, it's up to the the county, whoever controls with the allocation of the cost, and there's all sorts of regulations on that too. So there's no, if you were to get the money, it would also mean it's coming from someone else, like a school district or something like that. But yeah,
And instead, they take money, property tax money, that in theory, should be sent to us, and it's called ERAF, and they give it to the schools.
Well, you can't have a school without a sewer, and you know what I think about this.
Well, yeah, this is a whole nother discussion, and needless to say, we don't and can't create taxes. And so this is a hypothetical, it's another one of those things, which when we're talking about the water rate study, you'll see that there are requirements put on us from others that we need to pay attention to. But
This is just a thing we have to do every year.
Or it's
The
just
state
make work.
requires that we-
Totally pro forma.
Exactly.
The state requires that we do the calculation, and if we exceed the number, then we have to do something about it. We've never come anywhere close to the limit, and we never will. So, but we still have the obligation to do it every single year, and it usually takes about 30 seconds.
Except for people asking questions.
But
Right.
now more people know a little bit about the can limit, and that's fine.
Okay, moving right along to number 2, review and possible action. Oh, we have to vote on the next resolution, adopt the resolution next in order, resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District determining the 2019-2020 appropriations limit. Do I have a motion?
moved.
Scott, Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those are
Opposed?
action minutes, by the way.
Yes, opposed, abstentions, hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Review and possible action concerning employee wellness program.
All right, thank you. So we have an established wellness program. We started with this, I think, 3 years ago. And what it does is the district contributes $25 monthly towards health and fitness facility of the employee's choice upon proper documentation by the employee. And for this purpose, every year we receive a grant from the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Agency. We did this year as well, so we got $244 from Aqua JPIA, and by the way, a $20 Amazon gift card as well. And so we're asking the board to once again authorize this program, and we run this usually from September to September. We just got the notification that we were approved, so that's why we're bringing this up in advance. For the board's information, we anticipate spending this year about $700 on the program. If all employees would participate, then the district would spend around $1,820. So staff recommendation is to authorize up to $1,820 of district funds for contributions to MWSD full-time employee participation in wellness activities of $25 per month per employee after proof of payment by the employee.
That would be my question, is do they have to join like a sports center and pay money and then they get reimbursed 25?
They have to, so this
Or something like that.
this is really up to us how we handle this, and we have been handling and with this. So the information is actually submitted to Aqua JPIA, and what they're accepting is very generous. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily a monthly charge. It could be a number of classes that are submitted per month.
Okay.
Or
That's good. I think
Anything
it's
like
good system.
Okay, any more
Pretty
discussion? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those so Rick, Scott,
We're doing all the work tonight.
you are the heavy lifting. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed say nay. Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. I
And
think
that's just on decaf. You ought to see what we do
Whoa.
on serious coffee.
Okay, review and possible action concerning water rate study.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, in conjunction with this year's budget approval, we were authorized to initiate a water rates study. We already brought this up about a year ago, that this need would come up and arise, and prepared the board since quite some time for this. It's a fact that our current water rates aren't sufficient to provide the income for the next, for this fiscal year, actually. We just took a $500,000 loan from sewer to water. That is, of course, supposed to be repaid within a certain amount of time. So this is a situation that helps us bridge the situation until we have the water rate increase in place. And we asked our financial consultant, Barta Wells, to prepare a rate study. And so I think I have to deliver the disappointing news that we unfortunately don't have a rate study to share at this point with the board. So we are working still with Alex on trying to get actually a document to the board, and we're hoping to have something by August 15. So briefly about the past rate study was implemented in 2015. There we set the Prop 18 limit for 4 years at 3%. So we're going to revise the staff recommendation that is in the current staff report to refer the rate study to the Finance Committee for further consideration. And are asking for some more time before we work through this. We did a lot of thinking, and I'm not sure if Alex, you want to share some of these thoughts with us at this time.
Yeah, we've had some discussions about this, and I guess Clemens has been telling me for a while he knows the water enterprise is in the hole and needs more funding, and it's on a couple of things. One of the big things driving it is the capital needs. We look at your 5-year CIP, going forward, that was part of the budget, it averages, approaching $2 million a year, not quite. Doesn't mean you have to fund every project right out of the gate. So I think a significant portion of this rate study is really gonna be trying to, potentially phase in a more significant funding stream for your capital needs. Not all that different from what many other agencies out there are facing. We work for a lot of agencies on the peninsula, and a lot of them have pipelines that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old water tanks, and they didn't have to put a lot of money into them for a while, but now that they're doing more evaluations, they realize there's a lot of old facilities that need to be repaired, replaced, rehabbed, and I think you're in the same boat with a lot of these other agencies. Historically, you have had some, pay-as-you-go funding for capital, but some of your major projects have been funded by external sources. When you bought the water system, your GO bonds also provided some cash for some of those, critical initial needs. You've done, you've got some very low interest rate state revolving fund loans, and also I think an iBank loan to fund some of the needs. And also when we refunded the general obligation bonds, I guess it was 6 or 7 years ago, those were refunded not only for savings, but there was an extra $1.5 million of appropriations that hadn't been tapped. So the debt, so you were able to take out another 1.5 million and still have a lower debt service at the end of the day. But looking forward, there really needs to be an adequate pay-as-you-go funding stream built into your rates to address, these are long-term needs you're gonna have. So some of the questions are gonna be, how much, how soon, and how are we gonna fund it? And one of the ideas we've been talking with staff and with the Finance Committee, since this is capital, there's a potential it could be not just a rate increase, but it could be something separate, like a capital surcharge that would be kept aside and restricted for capital projects only to reinvest in the community's water system. And if it is a capital surcharge, it could be, it could be like a fixed charge that's based on meter size, or a lot of different ways of doing it. There are other agencies out there that have gone this path. It's not the most common way, but there are a number of other agencies in California that have such a charge, and potentially it could even be collected on the property tax roll, so it's not part of the ongoing billing, kind of the way you collect your sewer rates. So those were just some of the ideas, but we're just digging in the study. We've kind of run some preliminary numbers to get a sense of what the order of magnitude is. And I think that was the plan, is that we really want to hash through some of the stuff behind the scenes and hone it a bit before stuff gets brought to the board for the whole board. But it is good early on in this process to get input from everyone. Maybe there's some other issues that people want to address. Anything we want to hear early on, any ideas, input, things you think we might want to look at, so we can come back and make sure we're not missing the boat on something as we proceed.
Okay, let me see. I see one comment from the audience. Greg?
Well, I'm glad to see the study, and I recognize we're talking water here and not sewer, but I just wanted to make a few comments. It seems to me that in public works, once an asset, always an asset. So you're always going to be replacing anything you put down, hopefully with a better technology. You could get lucky. So I've been concerned when I've read the capital policies for the board, for the district, that they don't go out far enough. And I would hope, as I believe I saw when Sam did a 20-year plan and presented it here a year or two ago for the sewer side, that we take a longer look at the capital foundation, because I don't want us to be falling off a cliff where all of a sudden we reach the point that a lot of the old stuff is really breaking. I would like to see an inventory of all the water assets, their ages, their expected remaining life, and their replacement costs. And I brought up the issue of depreciation to some controversy at previous meetings. Depreciation, of course, is an inadequate way of funding a reserve because it, A, ignores the fact you might have to borrow, and B, is using yesterday's prices for something you're going to have to replace tomorrow. So I hope that those comments might serve as useful input to the board and to our esteemed consultant, and I welcome the opportunity to review this study. Oh, and one more thing. One more thing. There was about a $5 million project that was priced out for new joiners. I remember something about the number of connections. I think you did it.
New connections.
Yeah, it was new connections, and it was the concept was that the new people were going to pay for the new stuff. Was that water or was that sewer?
That was water.
Okay, and so the issues I saw in that study were, again, no time value of money. In other words, no allocation I could find in the analysis either saying we're losing interest we would otherwise earn or we're paying interest because we're borrowing it. And the attempt to isolate those new assets from the existing ratepayers seemed to fall off a cliff. When the assets age, they'd fall into the general pool so that the 95% of the existing ratepayers would end up subsidizing the second round of those assets. Okay, end of comments, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back to the board. Comments?
Yeah, just one comment. I'd like the idea of, not, let's say we had $2 million that we had to spend over the next several years, not hitting all the current residents with all the future costs. The idea of taking out loans, bonds, that sort of thing, which spreads the costs out into the future. So kind of like what Greg mentioned, new people coming in will also be picking up the costs. 5 years from now, a person moves into the district, they'll start paying for that stuff too, and not just everybody who's right now having to take the whole hit for the full future. That's sort of been my impression, spreads the costs out into the future for all future people that jump in and contribute also.
So you're saying not charge the current users?
Not just hit everybody for the next, 20 years
right.
of costs, because some of them might not even be here in 20 years. Why should they have to pay for future people's uses and that sort of thing? Just spread it out in the future.
Why you have the notion that that is part of the structure?
No, I'm suggesting, do we consider systems like that? I don't necessarily think we're doing that.
Wait a minute. I hear you saying two things at once. I hear you saying you want to spread the costs so that they're paid for not all at once now, but across the future, and then, so that you're not charging everyone.
Not
Right
charging
now.
current residents for the next
Right.
20-year construction plan.
Okay,
So we're
So,
not,
you know, what?
He's not saying we are, he's saying he's
No, I'm just
and we don't.
asking if we're doing that, and the idea of like the water bond where, you know, they're paying over time,
Mhm.
distributes that into the future, and that's a good thing, I think. And if we're talking about additional problems we have, replacing more pipes now, if we
So-
could continue that same kind of thought to push it out on future people also.
So, but, okay, we don't misallocate that way, so I understand the concern, but that's not how we operate. So,
Right.
you know, so for example, this notion that, try to clarify a little bit on this notion that for new infrastructure that's required for people who join the system, it is longstanding policy and well backed in the law that cost needs to be borne by the ones who would require and benefit from those. If say we make a new street, we gotta put a line down it, the houses on that street are gonna pay for that work. Long been that way. Ask Joe Gundren, he's constructed a bunch of things, he's laid a lot of those lines, he's seen to it that those things got paid. When those facilities are dedicated into the system, they become the community's property,
Mhm.
and then they are maintained through the fees that we collect from the users of the system. And the costs are allocated across the system. And there is no doing that a second time. We do maintenance. Sometimes we'll do replacement, but in general, it's not a matter of we've got to go buy a whole nother one of those because, you know, the egg timer ran down. What we do instead is we do engineering informed, very carefully prioritized engineering work to guide the maintenance work that we do. And so that's all borne as a collective cost, and we go target the areas that you see in our CIP as it comes up every year, right?
Sure.
So the future users paying for things, like for new infrastructure, we have a mechanism for that designed to allocate directly to the new ones at the time it comes in.
I was thinking more like replacing one of our mains, you know, one of the water mains. Okay, everybody's using it now. Costs $2 million to replace a main that everybody's currently using. I wouldn't want just, you know, current people to have to pay for all that, because future users will also use
Every year,
that kind of thing.
every year we spend,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of money
A lot of money.
every year. And sometimes it's a main, and sometimes it's a bunch of smaller lines, and sometimes it's a bunch of pressure regulating valves, and it's whatever needs doing this year based on urgency and priority. And we also have reserves where we save up money until we have the money that we need to do a big project, like the Canoff station, for example, right? So this is how we buffer that. And, you know, the year that a line in front of my house gets replaced, I've had people try to, you know, accuse me of like, hey, I want my street torn up and smelling like a sewer for a little while, you know, to benefit me. And it's like, no, that's all engineering driven, and the benefit isn't as localized as it may look when we're turning dirt, because we're doing this on a
Sure.
continuous, ongoing basis all across the district. If there's any weird imbalance, it's probably Seal Cove, because it moves a lot. We've had,
Earthquakes, faults.
well, no, it's that chunk on that fault line, the stuff to the west of the fault line is moving.
Read this week's
So-
review.
So it's continually moving, and so it costs a little more to maintain all that, and that's something that this board has spent countless hours discussing. I mean, not so much of late, but
Well,
there-
okay,
So anyway,
Okay.
this is, but I want the people
I-
listening to understand that this is an ongoing process, it's a continuous process, and where there's something of direct benefit, those costs are allocated directly, but the rest of it we carry as a collective.
Eric?
I would just say, we're considering all of those. I think I understand the concept that you're talking about. So we're in the finance committee, and the exercise we're going through is we're considering that and weighing all of those measures. So
Good.
by the time we get to August, I think we'll have some different options that can be debated.
Jim? Nothing. Do we have any direction? Should we just send this to the finance committee?
Yes, that's the recommendation, that we get a chance to work this through at staff level and include the finance committee and bring something back to the August 15 meeting.
Sounds good. Okay, we'll put it on the agenda for August 15. Thank you very much. Moving right along, review and possible action concerning California Special District Association Board of Directors election.
Thanks. So we're asked to cast a vote for 2019 C-State Board of Directors election for seat B, that's Bay Area. And that's for a 2020-2022 term. And so the ballot ends on August 9. So I'm going to cast a vote, and I've provided here, there's 3 people that are, 3 candidates, Ryan Klausnitzer, Todd Moody, and Cheryl Suddeth. I've submitted some details for them and just asking you if there is a preference for any one of those.
Okay. Any board members? I have a preference for Ray Klausnitzer. His last paragraph in his note says, "Thank you for considering me as your board member. I am a big fan of special districts as models of good governance and would be honored to represent the Bay Area once again in this capacity." The candidates all bring different strengths, but frankly, special districts are very special. And they are good governance. We can only spend our money on what we are supposed to spend our money on. We don't get to shift things around. We don't get to tax. We are, and we have special constraints. As we said, maybe some make-work, special legislation that we have to pay attention to that cities and other agencies don't. So my personal thought is Ryan Klausnitzer has seen everything from finance committee to being a trustee and a general manager. He's got a good perspective, and I like his basic attitude.
Okay, that sounds fine with
Good
me.
for me.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
moving on to reports.
If
Sewer
I could do just one quick thing, I could do it under reports, I guess LAFCO too, I'll just do it there.
Okay. Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, our July 8th meeting was canceled. Mid-Coast Community Council, I have not been following recently. CSDA report.
That won't happen for 3 more weeks.
Okay, LAFCO report.
LAFCO, actually some stuff happened. We actually had a LAFCO meeting yesterday. Couple items. We had what I call a standard kind of issue that LAFCO deals with, where a person had a failed septic system. It was declared a public hazard. It was unincorporated, so they couldn't
It was Redwood City.
just join up. It's Redwood City. They have a law, you have to hook up to municipal if there's one within 200 feet, if there's a pipe. There is, but it's Redwood City. And this was authorization for Redwood City to attach them. And it just goes instantly. So the one that might be more interesting to people was over in Belmont. There's I think this area is zoned like light industrial, but they're putting in a 250 unit, 4-story apartment complex, which includes 38 affordable units. It's in a light industrial area. The EIR they did said there would be no significant impact on 1,000 car trips a day in that area, because they predict 500 people 500
least-
cars,
at
at least
least
1,000
500.
trips every day in
Wow.
central Belmont industrial area, but it passed that. My comment was for affordable housing, it is, and what ABAG would approve is near jobs, it's infill, near transportation, near shopping. So it was just, again, automatically approved, but if people, that's just kind of a
Did
big
they-
project just appearing in the middle of nowhere.
Did they give an allocation to public transit? Because the notion of 1,000 trips a day is,
I didn't,
if it's
they
near
didn't
transit-
show anything about the EIR. This was just LAFCO approval of what had essentially already been approved by all the cities. The EIR has been approved.
yeah,
And this
it's
was just
not-
LAFCO because
It's
it
not gonna be
changed.
1,000 trips. If they're near the train and the bus, then it's gonna be,
You could just jump on here.
yeah.
So that was just an
Hopefully.
interesting one.
I have to admit, I hate to see good industrial land converted to housing,
Yeah,
but because we need places for people to work too.
do that. The interesting one, which would have direct influence here, especially in Montara, is we had a presentation from the San Mateo County Hazard Mitigation and Planning Group, a director named Dan Belleville, who was the Director of Public Safety Communications. And his presentation was on a process which is FRST, which has to do with fire safety. And that would be entirely relevant to everybody in Moss Beach here in Montara. They're doing things like mapping vegetation, mapping topography. I think we've already seen some of the results of this. They're trying to highlight worst areas, best areas, most dangerous areas, all of that, which has been going on ever since the Paradise Fire. So, what they did mention, and I was about to ask a question for, he mentioned they've acquired a chipper. And I mentioned that in like Santa Clara County and some other cities, they provide free chipping. They provide a depot and you take stuff there and they just chip it for you for free. I asked him if that was part of the plan, and he said they are definitely considering that, but this is kind of the initial things. So again, it's everything, when they do these surveys, it'll help, because Montara and El Granada and Moss Beach have been identified as the top fire areas. And the county will be looking again at what they can do to help mitigate that for all the residents here. So that was, I think, critical for us. I also emailed the board members and Clemens. They have a new draft policy out for municipal services reviews and for spheres of influence. It's a brand new document. I emailed it out to everybody. We approved the process of mailing it out to every special district, city, interested parties, everything. So it's going to be coming up. I asked for, well, do you have the last document so we could easily see what the changes were? And the chair of a group said, well, when we were going through it, we kept saying, well, we're talking about, city sphere of influence, and here's another piece over here. Let's pull that in. So it was essentially, as near as I could tell, a complete rewrite of the policies. So it's going to be kind of hard. Martha's going to send me the old documents, and I'll try to circulate those. But when it comes due here in a couple of weeks or months, this is super, super important to us, because this is where they try to consolidate again and again and again. And if we're still under Half Moon Bay's influence, sphere of influence, is there a process to get out of somebody's sphere of influence, set up our own? All those kinds of things I'm sure we're going to be discussing in about a month. But these are complete new policies, and this could determine, what our district is going to look like in the future. So that's a really biggie coming up. So.
Good,
We do have our own sphere of influence.
Okay.
good. Moving right along then to attorney report. Attorney Schricker is not here. Do you have any report, Chris?
No, Madam President, no report.
Director's reports, do we have any? Seeing none, general manager's report.
Yeah, I do have usually a standing item up, alerting about any meeting cancellations. This time I didn't make it in the agenda. I would like everybody to know that the August 1 meeting is not going to happen. And
No, I want to have a meeting.
will be canceled. So our next regular scheduled meeting is on August 15th.
Okay, and so for check signing,
We actually are gonna set something up at the beginning of the month so that the treasurer can sign the checks. And you actually mentioned yesterday that you will be leaving on the 7th.
Yeah, well, fine.
So we'll make sure that
Yeah,
we have everything ready beforehand so that you can sign.
okay, and please talk to our, the person in charge of our web presence, our front page. I got a comment from a attendee who said that he looked at our webpage tonight and it said our meeting was going to be announced, and so the timer had flipped on it. We should make it so that the timer changes like at 10 at night or something, so that people know during the course of a day if there even was a meeting.
Yes, it should change after the meeting, agreed, yes.
Okay, that would be good,
We'll take care of that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll be as I sent out the email, I'll be missing the SAM meeting coming up, so.
We need
Well,
volunteers.
that's under SAM
Monday.
report, we have to, exactly, we wanted to talk about that under SAM report, so there's a need actually to fill a position.
Which day is that one?
The next is the 22nd, I think,
This coming Monday.
It's coming
Yes.
Monday.
It's coming Monday.
which would
the
be the
agenda went out today.
21st. That's a 21st. No, that's a 22nd. That's my husband's birthday. And I will be at the sandboard meeting.
Scott, you're the first alternate?
Yeah, let me look at the agenda real quick.
Okay, while you're doing that, we have future agendas, which are to discuss the type of minutes. And the other one was, now I've lost my notes. Oh, well, I've got it written down. Let's take a recess, and we will convene in closed session.